Hello and welcome to the channel. So, how many times have you heard or read of how a 351 Cleveland has an oiling problem? And how many times have you also been told the reason how to cure that oiling problem is by putting restrictor kits in the cam, the galley that comes from the main bearing up to the cams? You've got to put a restrictor kit in there, and it's a bit dark, but let's see if I can get it in here. You also, in regards to putting restrictors in here to direct oil from the pump to go up into the galley so it can feed things better. How many times and how many ways have you been told this is how you cure a Cleveland and its oiling dramas? The only problem is it doesn't, and it won't, because a Cleveland doesn't have an oiling problem. Alright? The Cleveland's oiling problem is here, in the heads. To help understand what I'm trying to get across, and to explain the secret of a 351 Cleveland and its unique oiling requirements, we've got on the other stand, just across from the Cleveland, this is, dare I say, the arch enemy to the Australian Falcon, which was the Holden 308 engine. Sorry, I should have said the enemy to the Cleveland was Holden's 308. And its oiling system, surprisingly, is the same as a Cleveland. Namely, it comes up out of the block and goes into the oil lifter galley. And these are the crossovers. So these are fed first, and then they drop down and they feed the mains. So this isn't a priority main block, yet no one says that this engine has an oiling problem. And the same goes for the 429 460, big block Chevy, and I think also the small block LA Chrysler motors are also the same. None of these engines have the same oiling problems or the same I'm trying to look for the word here, rumoured, and I'll put them as rumours because that's what they are, rumoured oiling problem, and everyone points to it's the layout of the oil galleys. To me, if that actually held true and was fact, then all of these engines would have the same problem, but they don't. And here's why. And we're going to start here. Now, on a Holden, it took me a little while to work it out, but on a Holden, this is the drain back from the head. And it's probably best seated over here. So the scallop sits just low enough so that, the scallop is low enough so that the drain back allows oil to passively drain out of the head back into the lifter gallery, the lifter area, and then from here helps lubricate the lifter bores and eventually falls down onto the camshaft and helping lubricate your cam lobes, keeping them alive. Now, if I can get down low enough, if we look on this angle, it is quite easy to see how low this passive drain is. In fact, the drain itself, which is, if you can see, probably not because it's too damn dark. See if I can turn it. Hold on a second. Alright. A little better? Oh yeah, there we go. So, down, somewhere in that darkness there. Oh, it's virtually there anyway. So where that dipstick ends is where the drain back, oh there it is. Should get the light somewhere better. Alright, got a light on the job so you can see more. As you can see, the passive drain back hole, this is in the front, and there's one up the back as well. One up the back as you can see, they are substantially lower than the valve spring seats. So as you can see there, let's get that out of the way, that's better. So as you can see, the valve spring seat is taller than the drain back. So what does this mean? So that once oil comes off the rocker arm, drips down across the rocker, runs down the valve, cools the valve, runs down, sits in here, and then passively drains back into here. Now, because the engine is naturally on a tilt, most of the oil will go back to the rear and drain back via here, which is why we have a large oil hole in the back of the block. So they're rather smart when they actually designed and built this thing, which is quite good. Now, the size of these is not all that big. Probably not much bigger than the pushrod hole, which, oh, there you go, there's one there. So they're not that much bigger. Oh, sorry, it's not that much smaller than that. So the same problem exists, but if we look, same problem. So, so when this oil hole cannot passively return oil back to the valley, oil then builds up, and so it will build up, and with the rocker cover on, the oil level will rise. And I'll take my trusty dipstick that I've got. We will see that the oil level has to get to about there before it starts draining out the pushrod. See here, we've already got all the pushrod holes here, so the oil level has to get to only there, which is, what is that? No, only talking maybe 2 inches, 50 mil. So if you can imagine that all the way along the rockers, and there's specific reasons for this, and all V8s will do it, all engines themselves will do it, because what they're doing is that the oil is protecting the valve spring. It is keeping them cool. When you rev an engine, you're stressing the valve spring, you're making it work harder. And one of the things with I want to try and say the word, screw it, I'll just say the basic one. When you know how metals work, when spring steel gets hot, it loses its tension. In other words, the spring pressure decreases. This then limits your RPM capabilities. So before we could rev to 7 grand, the valve spring can no longer take that, and will go down to 6, 5, and the valve spring will get weaker, won't be able to control the valve. If you are not careful with this, you either break the valve spring, which is one, or because of the valve float, you then drop a valve. In 1974, when Holden were using the SLR 5000 Tirana, they did a lot of dyno work, and the sump capacity on the engine, the sump capacity on the dyno was 3.6 litres. And Harry Firth, when he made note of it, that after all the dyno work was done and the engine was put in the car and it was all signed off for homologation purposes, he instantly saw it and knew that the motor would not last because the capacity in the sump was not big enough. So why did he know? The progression of the sump, or the oil in the sump, will go up to the head and will not drain back fast enough to the sump. What will that cause? Well, that will cause the pump. You've now caused starvation in the pump, which means you'll run a bearing. And that's exactly what happened. And with a lead of 6 laps, the engine failed spectacularly, might I add you. If you want to go and see what happened and how good that occurred, and how powerful and how far ahead. What was his name? It was Peter Brock, and the teammate his teammate, I can't tell you, unfortunately. I don't know, I don't remember. But if you want to go and look at it, go and look at Bathurst 1974, and that will show you the failure that came from a lack of oil in the sump. Now later on, and in fact the very next year, that was corrected, and they had a 7-litre sump in it. So let's go back to the Cleveland and we'll show you the difference. Now, anyone who owns a Cleveland knows there is always a problem here, as in it always leaks oil. We always have it. There's always an oil leak between here up to here. Now, why is that? Well, it's because the oil drain bag has to actually climb a hill. The oil drain bag is up here, so the line from here to here, it made look, actually on that angle is quite sad, but it might be a little better. As you can see, the angle of that drain bag, and it doesn't help that the drain bag actually travels down and then goes along. So it's designed here to maintain oil, and they've done it on purpose. They want oil up here to keep the valve springs nice and cool. The only problem is that when you rev these engines, oil goes up here, oil goes up to protect the valves, but can't get back. And no amount of restrictor kits or changing oil lines and putting oil lines in the back in here, putting them in the back, taking out the plugs for the lifter galleys and running a new line to the back of here, that's not going to change anything. All the oil sits here. All the oil sits up here. And if we do that same experiment, where this one here is in the front, obviously that's easy, and then it goes down into there, helps lubricate your distributor gear, but this is all just like under happy, we're all fine arrangement. But when we get into a racing environment, look at how much further that oil has to go, and we are talking heaps. So from the top of, so we're talking 3 inches at least. So we've got an inch more oil over the entire length of the head, and that's just one bank as well. So what I'm going to propose and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some clay in the holes. I'm going to put a Motorsport rocker cover on, which is over there. It is bigger than the standard one, so this volume is going to promote more volume because obviously the rocker cover itself is bigger, so more volume can go in there. But most people don't run the standard rocker covers anyway. But it's what I've got, and I'll put them on, and I'm going to fill the head with oil, and we're going to find out how much oil can go in this head before it starts draining out the pushrod holes. Alright, got it ready. Got clay in the holes, and I put some extra bolt holes in. I put some extra head bolts in because I noticed I'd only had 2 on, so I had to put something in there else I'll fill up with oil. So ready to go. Put the lid on, put some oil in it. Alright, so I've got 3 litres of something that resembles oil. It's waste oil anyway. So I'm gonna see if I can pour this with one hand. If it gets difficult, I'm gonna put it down, put the phone down so you can't see it, and I'll put half in, and I'll then show you the rest. So see how we go. Oh yeah, no, that was a waste of time. Anyway, what do you see over there? Oh, here we go. First shot of oil. It's interesting. Right, it's coming out the push rod. So that's a lot less than what I anticipated. I was expecting a lot more. That's about a litre. I was expecting a lot more than that. But still, it's going to be fun getting that off. But it is, in fact, wow. I might actually try this again with a different bloody. Alright, always been doing this stuff, there's always errors and you always find them, so I found that I thought the motor was reasonably level. I was wrong. So I've got the jack holding the front of the motor up, and I'll just show you, slide across. That is a lot more level than what it was, considerably more level. So, and the other thing is too is that the bottle that I was using was quite large, it was quite cumbersome, and the amount that went in it, well, I can't be 100% sure of how much it is. So reduced my bottle size down, we're down to a litre, which is just over a quart, and right, let's start filling it up. See if I can get around here. So I'm not too sure where it'll come out, so I'm trying to hold this and pour the thing in, so yeah, you get the idea. Right, here we go, start pouring. Alright, nothing out yet. Still nothing. Still nothing. It's about 3/4. Still nothing. Well, it is approaching, and that is now, it is, we are empty, so, and we've got no drain back. So if this sump holds 4 quarts, even if you think 4.5, but I think for some reason from memory I seem to think that it's about 4 quarts in the sump. Well, there's already 1 quart in here, so there'll be another head over there. So there's 2 quarts. So half of your sump volume is sitting in the head, and I haven't even got any out yet. I'm going to put another litre in the bottle, and we will keep going. All right, another quart ready to go. Yep, and you've got no leaks around there, so it's not leaking out. All right. Round 2. Alright, I'm going to hold you down here and I'll keep pouring it in. Alright, going in. Going in. Yeah, still. Let's try and come out a little bit. That's halfway. Holy crap. There it is. Bingo. Alright. Good oil coming out. And it's up there too. There's dancing in there too. So it's showing that the head's reasonably level. You do have to remember though that when it's in the car, the engine is on a tilt. So it is tilted this way. It's down at the back. So there will be less than. So this isn't ideal, it's not perfect, but it is to give you an idea of how much oil sits in here before you get drained back. Okay, well, sorry, when the return here gets overwhelmed by the oil that is going up into here. This is obviously, you're still going to have drain back, but it is designed to keep oil in here to protect the valve springs because you're revving the engine. Okay, so that's why that's there. Looking at the bottle, oh, it's even got some measurements on it. So there's 400, 450, so it's just over 1.5 litres. So what would that be? Oh, let's say probably let's say 1.6 quarts. So you've got easy 3 quarts in here. You'll have 3 quarts in your rocker covers and 1 quart in a pan. No amount of bushing lifters or putting restrictor kits in it is going to save you from having only 1 quart in the pan. And that is what a Cleveland's oiling problem is all around. It is oil in here. Now, how do we fix that? Well, you can go and put a hole in the back in here, which has been seen. You put a hole in here and you put a passive drain back in here or even in here, and that allows more oil to return to the sump. But as what these guys did back in the 80s, 70s and 80s when this was actually done, is you then run into valve spring fatigue. So this might work on a drag car where you can chuck a set of valve springs at it after every meeting. But even for me, a set of valve springs aren't exactly cheap. So the only positive way that you can do that is simply change your pan and put a bigger sump on it. Now, that isn't the only problem. Well, it's not the only cure-all to a Cleveland as well, but that comes down to the pump, and I'll leave that one for another episode. So, come on, I can't tell you everything in one day. So anyway, hope you enjoyed that, and I'll clean up a mess. You don't need to see me that either. If you've managed to get this far, cheers for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Bye. I forgot something. So, trick of the 80s. So this was something that my father had. He had a Cleveland in the 80s, and he knew of this problem. So he couldn't afford to have a high performance sump. So what he would used to do is he used to overfill the stock one. So as you can see, add above that line, you're in this zone safe, and then this is the recommended fill line. This scratch mark up here is 5 litres in the pan, and that is after the engine has been run up with the filter. So that is 5 litres, 5 litres loaded person, if you want to say. So the oil filter is full, and then it is topped back up to this, it's topped up to this mark here. That is only it's only 7/16 taller in the pan, and that helps, as with this demonstration. When you've got 3 litres of oil in the rocker covers, then at least you've still got 2 quarts in the sump. And he never had any bearing clearance. He'd never had any bearing problems, and he used to treat his Cleveland like it was a race car. He used to beat the crap out of it. So hopefully that's a bit of lessons from the 80s on how they used to deal with, or what the true mystery around what a Cleveland oiling system is. And with that, you can now make you can put corrective measures in, which is namely a bigger sump, which will correct this problem. There are other problems, but as I said, they're for another day. Alright, thank you very much. We'll catch you next time. Bye.